I was a soldier once, though the years have stripped that word of its pride. The wars had left me hollow, a shell wrapped in rusted mail and memories that gnawed like rats in the dark. We fought for kings and banners, for pay that never came, and when peace finally fell over France like a tired sigh, I found myself wandering home, a stranger to the same soil that had birthed me. The fields of Poitiers had sprouted not wheat, but bones. And yet there was something worse stirring beyond the horizon. Rumours rode faster than any horse. They came from the south, whispers of a pestilence that blackened the flesh and left the cities empty. At first we laughed. Soldiers live among death. We've seen men split open, burned, starved and trampled. What sickness could scare men who've seen the entrails of war? But the priest spoke in trembling tones. Caravans arrived half empty. Merchants from Genoa and Marseille told of corpses piling by the docks, of ships drifting with no one alive aboard. When I reached my village near Tours, it was quiet, too quiet. The market square, once full of shouting and song, felt hollow. The cobbler's boy told me of travellers turned away at the gates, of dogs feasting on what the priests dared not bury. The abbot called it God's punishment, but for what, none could agree. Some blamed the English, others, the Jews, most, the stars. I just watched the smoke rise from distant hills and wondered if war had followed me home. I took lodging with an old comrade, Etienne, who had lost 3 fingers at Crécy. We spent our nights by the fire, trying to drink the silence away. He told me of a procession that had passed through the town, men and women whipping themselves bloody in the streets, crying for mercy. The children hid from them. "They say the plague is already in Avignon," he whispered, "and spreading north." The spring rains came heavy that year, and with them the smell. It wasn't the usual rot of dung and damp earth. It was sweet, almost floral, and it lingered long after the bodies were carted away. A merchant from Bordeaux arrived, coughing into his sleeve, his skin blotched purple beneath his beard. By morning, he was dead. The priest burned his bedding, but even that couldn't chase the stench. Etienne crossed himself and muttered that we should leave before the town closed its gates. I wanted to believe it was just another sickness, fever from bad water, or the rot that takes men in summer. But something about it gnawed at me. The dogs wouldn't go near the corpse. The flies came thick as rain. The old women whispered that the dead's eyes stayed open, fixed toward the heavens as if waiting for an answer that never came. That night, I dreamed of the battlefield again, the fog, the clatter of steel, the moment the world turned red and silent. But when I woke, it wasn't the past that haunted me. It was the quiet. No birds sang, no children played in the street. Even the wind seemed to have died. Etienne was gone. His cot was cold. In his place, I found only his rosary and a note scrawled in shaking hands. "Gone to find my family before it reaches them." I stepped outside. The church bell tolled, not for mass, but for the dead. They carried another body through the square, faces covered, steps hurried. The priest's voice cracked as he muttered the prayers, his eyes darting to the horizon. Something unseen was coming for us all, and we could feel it, in the stillness, in the air thick with dread. I tightened the strap of my sword, though I knew it would do no good. You can't fight what you can't see. And yet, for the first time in all my years of war, I felt fear, not of dying, but of being left behind to witness the world unravel. The bell did not stop ringing that week. Its voice cracked by the 3rd day, groaning like the sky itself had grown weary of mourning. I joined the men digging graves at first. It gave the hands something to do, something that felt like duty, but the holes filled faster than we could dig them. The soil turned slick and black, and the smell, sweet almost like flowers left too long in the sun, clung to our throats. We buried them in twos, then in heaps. Soon no one asked for names, only for the earth to cover what was left. Fear took the village in silence. No one touched one another anymore. Bread was left at doors, prayers muttered from behind shutters. The market died, the tavern emptied. The bells of mass grew faint until even the priest's voice began to fail. Father Guillaume was the last to speak of hope. I saw him cough crimson into his hands during a sermon. By dusk his body lay outside the church steps, wrapped in his own vestments. They burned him before nightfall. The sickness moved without sense or mercy. Some died in a day, choking on black foam. Others lingered for a week, their flesh rotting while they still breathed. I saw Etienne's brother slumped by the smithy, his neck swollen with black lumps that burst when touched. He begged for water, and I gave it, though I knew it sealed my fate. He died before dawn, his hand frozen around mine. That touch stayed on my skin like fire long after he was gone. By midsummer, the carts stopped coming. The men who hauled the dead were dead themselves. No one rang the bells now. There was no one left to pull the rope. The baker fled, the mill stood empty, and the dogs turned savage, feeding on the dead they once guarded. I thought of leaving, heading north following rumours of clean air and untainted fields, but the roads were graveyards, and the wind carried the same smell everywhere. There was nowhere to run. The town began to rot in silence. Doors hung open, windows broken, fires still burning in empty homes. At night I heard cries from the convent, nuns singing hymns that turned into screams, and then nothing. I walked the streets with my sword still at my hip, though there was nothing left to fight. The war had ended years ago, but death had found another way to march. Not with banners and horns, but with coughs and prayers whispered into the dark. One evening I stood on the ramparts as torches flickered below. Villagers were burning their own houses, turning their backs on the life they'd built. Flames licked the sky, and I could smell the wood, the cloth, and maybe the flesh. It looked like the world was trying to erase itself before the pestilence could. I thought of joining them, setting fire to all I owned, but I couldn't. Some stubborn part of me still clung to life, though I no longer knew why. When the storm came, it drowned the town in rain and thunder, washing the blood into the river, but not the sickness from the air. The few of us left gathered inside the church, staring at the altar as lightning lit the stained glass. No one prayed anymore. We just waited. Then the boy began coughing, a wet, ragged sound that filled the stone walls. His mother screamed, clutching him close, but it was already too late. I didn't move to stop her. I just sat there and listened, counting each breath until there were no more to count. The cough found me 3 days after the storm. At first I thought it was the smoke still clinging to my lungs, but when I felt the heat in my blood and the ache behind my eyes, I knew. The swellings came next, small lumps beneath the arms, tender at first, then burning. I tried to hide it, wrapping rags around my ribs, pretending I was strong enough to outlast this unseen enemy. But every hour my strength slipped away like sand through an open hand. The streets were empty by then. I walked alone through the square where the fountain had run dry. The statues looked like ghosts, their marble faces streaked with ash. A dead horse lay beside the well, its eyes open to the sky. I remembered the days when I would polish my armor beneath that same sun, laughing with the others about battles we'd survived. We thought war was the worst thing a man could know. How foolish we were. Swords only take the body, not the world around it. I made my way back to the barracks, though there was no one left to command. The doors hung loose on their hinges. Inside, I found a few shields leaning against the wall, a half-empty flask of wine, and the torn banner. of our old company. I sat beside it for hours, staring at the emblem we once carried into battle, a red lion roaring in defiance. I touched the fabric, stiff now with dust and blood, and felt a kind of peace in it. There was honor once, I thought, not in killing, but in standing beside men who would die for you. The plague had stolen even that. As night fell, I felt the fever climb. Every sound turned distant, the rain, the creak of wood, the faint toll of a bell far away. I wrote what words I could in this journal, though my hands trembled and the ink bled across the page. I wanted to leave behind more than bones. Maybe someone would find it, a pilgrim, a scribe, another soul foolish enough to seek life among ruins. Let them know that we were here, that we fought not against armies but against forgetting. By the second night I could not rise. My vision swam in gold and black. I dreamed of the fields before the war, of my mother's voice, the smell of bread, the light of morning through linen curtains. I saw the faces of my brothers in arms, whole and smiling, waiting beyond a mist. When I tried to speak their names, no sound came. The world grew quiet, and I realized even the rats had gone. The plague had no more need of us. I dragged myself to the window once to see the last of the fire dying over the town. Smoke drifted across the rooftops, glowing red in the dawn. The sky was clear for the first time in weeks. I thought of God then, not as I had been taught, in fear, but in wonder. If he truly watched us, then perhaps he too was weeping, or maybe he had turned away long ago, unable to bear the sight. Either way, the silence felt like mercy. When the light finally came, it was soft and white. I felt it touch my face through the window. I tried to lift my head, but my body would not follow. So I simply closed my eyes and let the warmth rest upon me. The world, for one brief moment, was still, and in that stillness I whispered to whoever might find these pages, "Remember us not for how we died, but for how we endured." Then the pen slipped from my hand, and the last sound I heard was the wind moving through the broken streets, carrying my breath away.